One of the most popular, I'm told, questions asked of ChatGPT in the UK is, how do you make money using ChatGPT? And that's the kind of question we are going to try to answer a little bit here today, as I walk you through a journey of this phenomenal technology that we are all well aware of, the transformer technology, and how do we take that toward a journey that transforms the businesses and teams and functions that we lead and represent. So let's begin. The first thing to keep in mind with GPT and transformers in general, and you may not be able to see every detail, but it's the shape of the curve that matters. This is the Gartner assessment of AI technologies for 2023. Two things to keep in mind. This curve represents, and it pretty much holds true for most of the new technologies that emerge, that you start out with sort of innovation on the left-hand side, the triggers of innovation, and you move toward this expectation that is heightened. And then you get into this disillusionment trough, because expectations almost never can be matched. And from there, you slowly pull your way out and get to a plateau and slope of productivity. That's the general shape and adoption or absorption of technology in business. The second thing to keep in mind is that generative AI is right at the top of the expectation curve right now. And that's something we all have to grapple with. I'm sure you have to grapple with every day, because your entire business, starting from your board down to the CEO and your CXOs, are all trying to figure out how to take advantage of generative AI. And so the expectations are super high. So let's try to understand what the current state of play is, and then we will talk about why that matters to what we do, what you do, what we help you do, which is deliver great customer service, engage your customers very well. That's the problem or the business that you are in. And then we'll talk about some things that we believe can be done really nicely, easily, cleverly to help you in that journey using generative AI. How many of you recognize this picture? Anybody? No? Really? For all the, yes, what is it? Yes, correct. This is the statue of Alan Turing at Bletchley Park. I'm sure all of you know that story. A phenomenal genius of his times. Well, here's the thing. When he, in 1950, first introduced this concept of a Turing test, and the idea was that if a machine behind a curtain, behind a screen, could fool a human into believing that a conversation between the machine and the human was really between a human and a human, could essentially behave like a human, then you could argue that that machine could think. Well, GPT feels human. Right? That's one of the reasons it's so exciting. And in fact, in July, there was a nice paper in Nature, one of the prestigious journals, that GPT-4 fooled quite a few. The percentage was over 70% of experts in this Turing test. And so let's try to understand what that sort of sense of humanness comes from. The first thing is, of course, that the conversational nature of GPT, ChatGPT particularly, makes it feel very human. The fact that we don't have to talk in structured, mathematical, programmatic ways. That we can talk in free language. And now with GPT-4s, you can talk in or interact in images and audio and videos as well. So that in itself makes something feel human. The other thing that makes it feel human is that it makes things up, as we do. We all do. The other thing is, if you ask me a question about something today, and you ask me the same question 2 days later, chances are I might give you an answer that is substantially similar, but not exactly the same. So there is always some variation. Again, a sense of humanness. That's kind of the excitement, the fact that it's so easy to interact with, ChatGPT, and the fact that it does behave like a human being. Of course, there's a lot of things that it doesn't do well, and we'll get to that in a bit. The other thing which has been amazing about GPT and ChatGPT is the fact that it was adopted so quickly around the world. So if you look at this chart, it shows you all the way from the left side where Google Translate took over 6 years to get to 100 million active users, down that slope with ever-increasing acceleration to get to 100 million active users. You get to TikTok, which got to it in 7 months, which is super impressive, but then ChatGPT got to it in 2 months. In 2 months, 100 million users. Why? Well, the simple reason we think, and you all, I'm sure most of you have ChatGPT accounts. Just show of hands, how many of you have ChatGPT accounts? Yeah, most of you. Okay. What do you use it for? Besides asking how to make money. I'm kidding, right? So the fact that it can do so many different things in an easy way and get you 80% of the way. In many cases, do a really good job. In some cases, make small mistakes. In some cases, really mess it up. And the challenge is it's hard to tell when it does what. But if you step back from all the excitement of technology, the thing that is clear to us, and to all of you, I'm sure, is that there are big winners and losers ahead in the market because of this technology. Whenever you get this kind of disruptive technology that comes across and gets absorbed into the economy and the business, starting all the way from computers, through to internet, through to mobile, cloud, and the rest. Well, in the case of computers and internet, economists have done extensive analysis and tried to understand if there has been an aggregate increase in well-being and productivity, sort of the GDP or the overall global GDP growth because of these technologies. And interestingly, do you know what they found? There has been no discernible impact. I know, it's kind of disappointing because we're all in this business. We hope computers and internet and web and mobile, all these things will make an impact on overall economy. It turns out there is no discernible impact in the aggregate. However, there are huge impacts at the micro level. Businesses die, new businesses get created as a result of these technologies. And so winners and losers across the business is something that we have to be prepared for. How do we shape ourselves? How do we prepare ourselves? How do we take advantage of this technology? A few things I want to bring out before I jump into the second part. The rate of improvement of this technology is very rapid. If you look at, and it's hard to quantify because there is no direct and clear comparison in terms of counts. The numbers that people throw around are around number of learnable parameters in the model, the deep learning neural network model. And that's a surrogate, but not a very good one. However, just to put it in perspective, GPT-1, which was, let's start with GPT-2, that's probably easier. GPT-2, which was a generational sort of precursor, GPT-2, 3, and now 4. So GPT-2 had close to 2 billion parameters. GPT-3 had over 100 billion parameters. I'm giving you approximate numbers. These are learnable parameters that can be automatically adjusted as the network is processing input material. With GPT-4, OpenAI stopped giving data on that. They said, we don't want to talk about these numbers anymore. Not sure why, but people are assessing and estimating that it's over 1 trillion parameters, learnable parameters. All this happened over a span of 3 to 4 years. So if you think about that rate of improvement, if in fact number of parameters is somewhat correlated with the capability of these models, you can imagine the rate of improvement here. It's not the only way to measure it. There are other ways to measure that capability. But the fact that this technology is improving very quickly, just between GPT 3.5, which was the basis of ChatGPT, and GPT-4, which came out 4 months after ChatGPT came out, the hallucination rates went down by over 70%. So big improvements, very rapid. If you extrapolate that over a few years, it does seem like this technology is going to be extremely capable. The second thing to keep in mind is that the productivity potential of such technology, again, at a business level, at a function level, is very high. Even as I mentioned that maybe the impact overall on the global economy may not be very significant because there'll be winners and losers, we'll see. But specific businesses and functions are going to be heavily impacted because productivity gains are tremendously possible here. And we'll talk about some of that ourselves. Now, interesting, McKinsey Global Institute has done a bunch of studies, and they came out with some interesting stats. Now, there's a ton of assumptions in this, so take it with a grain of salt. But over the next 10 years, their assessment is that customer operations, in other words, customer engagement, customer service, as a function across the economy, is going to become more efficient by over 30% because of GPT and generative AI technologies. Over 30% in the aggregate across all businesses in that customer operation function. That's a big improvement, both through automation as well as through productivity gains of individuals. Same time, interestingly, on the sales and marketing side, they claim the improvement will only be 10%. Now, you could argue why that is or not, but I found that interesting. They expect and believe that the productivity improvements in customer operations, which is customer service for the most part, is going to be far greater than in sales and marketing. The other area which they believe is going to be tremendously impacted in a positive way is product development and software development. They expect over 30% improvement in that as well. The point I'm trying to make here is the expected impact over the next 5 to 10 years is very large. At the same time, we all are well aware, all you leaders in businesses who are representing large companies, you're well aware that most businesses have put an absolute embargo on using GPT-like tools inside the business. You can use it as a consumer, but when you use it in the business, it has to be controlled, it has to be managed. You have to make sure that it's not creating IP risks. In other words, your business know-how is not getting out there. But there's another risk associated with GPT which you cannot control, and that has to do with brand risk. If you use it, two things could happen. One, you make a mistake, and your customers or partners or whoever the stakeholder is feels like this is not the way they would like to be treated. So there's a brand and reputation risk. There are companies out there that have, right at the beginning of the GPT sort of excitement, started to automate a lot of their businesses and started to publish marketing and news material using GPT and had some small issues here and there. But the blowback of that is disproportionate. So using it carefully, safely, in a compliant way is critical. The part that is most challenging about GPT and generative AI right now is that the technology is very opaque. For the most part, for businesses, if you're not one of the 3 or 4 organizations that is deep into the foundational models that are underpinning the GPT capability, you don't have a clue of how it works. Which means the controls are very limited, very, very limited, through prompt engineering, which is essentially trying to tell it in plain language, in spoken language, what you want. And you're left guessing what the impact is going to be, because the response of this tool by nature, by definition, is somewhat non-deterministic. It doesn't give you the same answer to the same question again and again. So that technology, lack of technology transparency is a big concern. Because unless you understand what it's doing and why it's doing what it's doing, sometimes you want to be careful before you use it in ways that could put you at risk, both on the IP side as well as the brand side. And the last thing which is important to keep in mind is that rules and regulations in this area are pretty much non-existent at this point. It's starting to come up. We're talking about it. It'll take some time. Copyright, for instance, is a huge issue. Now, there's debate about whether fair use of copyrighted material includes processing it or including it as learning material for GPT tools. It's unclear. As humans, we can read it. We can read books that are published, that are copyrighted. We can remember it. We can use that know-how if we want to. But GPT, because of the way it operates, there is risk with the way it can absorb all that know-how and essentially make all that proprietary, creative content redundant or very low value. So these are all big concerns that you and your colleagues and your leaders in organizations are grappling with at the same time. This is pretty much how we feel. So all these risks, yep. This could be a problem, that could be a problem, yet we want to go in and do this as fast as we can. And why is that? Because it's so exciting, it's so approachable, it's so easy, and it promises productivity gains that seem quite unusual. So here we are. Let's talk about what we do, meaning this group, and we at eGain help you do, and how do we bring this technology to bear on this opportunity. So our job is very simple. We help answer customer questions. That's what we do. At the simplest level, that's what we help with in a business, correct? Most of you lead organizations and teams that do that job. Now, at scale, it's very complicated, and so there's a lot of technology involved. But if you boil it right down to the basics, what it means is if somehow, every question that came into your organization could be answered with answers that were correct, consumable, compliant, and cost-effective, your job is done. So let's look at the people who help you do this job, besides you yourselves, your teams that are the management of these customer service organizations, the agents in your contact centers, for the most part, or your branch offices, or in the field. But these are people who are on the front line, who are delivering to your brand promise every day. These agents, I contend, are struggling. You all know this. COVID did not make it easier. The challenge is that the easy stuff, those questions that are coming in constantly, those easy questions are getting automated more and more. The hard questions remain. The products they are servicing and the products that your organization is selling are getting more and more complicated because of various reasons, right? Transactional products are out. Product as a service is in. Everything is a relationship. Everything is long-term. Products are getting more complex in technology, in the way they're integrated. And all of that has to be serviced by this agent. Compliance requirements continue to be pretty high. Regulations continue to go up, which means the agent has to keep all that in mind. And finally, productivity pressures are constant. You're always trying to get the agent to do more, faster, So with that agent, you think about who you are bringing into the workforce. These are people who have a digital lifestyle. These are not people who are used to just getting trained and forever, keeping everything in their head, going out and using that capability. They're used to guidance. They're used to finding information and getting answers through video, through YouTube, through TikTok. These are people who are looking to improve their way of life through flexible work. These are people who are looking for meaningful work. And now in an environment where you have hybrid workforces, either they're working from home or sometimes they're coming to work in the office, you have an environment which is limited loyalty. Right? You don't have this long-term loyalty because those bonds don't really strengthen because of all these reasons. That's the agent. Those are the thousands and thousands of people who are responsible for your brand with your customers. I would say that the agent crisis continues to escalate. Right? Attrition is still very high among agents. We talk to our clients and they tell us recruiting is still very hard. So combining these two, it's an ever-growing problem of training people in the conventional sense. Right? You train them up, they work for you for a little bit, before they get really competent, they move on. And the cycle starts again. So let's think about what this problem really comes from. What's the source of this challenge of continuous training, lack of competence, attrition, hiring, training? And in that environment, you're trying to inject technology. Well, the first thing you have to keep in mind is when contact centers started out over 50 years ago, the assumption was that the technology did not allow for people who were getting on the phone at that time, it was all phone-based, to know everything about everything. In other words, they had to be specialized. They had to do some job carefully and well, and for the rest, you had to move to the next guy, or you had to do resource management. This was an artifact coming from the world of manufacturing, the assembly lining world. That's the basic concept that has continued to be evolving, improving, making it more complex and sophisticated. But the principle is that an agent is not an all-knowing person. That's the fundamental principle. But what if that weren't true? What if all your agents could answer all your contacts? Now, we contend that that is possible today. It can be much better tomorrow. And that with knowledge and AI technologies, you can, in fact, enable every agent to answer every contact effectively today. And you will hear from many of your colleagues here and our clients today, the rest of the day, about how using knowledge and AI technologies helps them achieve that to a great degree, and the benefits they get out of that. So this is really exciting to us, where we are today in a proven, scalable way to deliver the ability to have every agent answer every contact is available today. However, there's a catch. There's always a catch, right? Every system has some critical bottleneck. What's the bottleneck with it? Well, before we get into that, think about this. This is not something we at eGain claim alone. We claim it, of course. Gartner's assessment from late last year is that knowledge management is the #1 technology for contact centers and customer service organizations to improve customer experience, improve agent experience, and efficiency in operations. That's a tall statement. That's a big, big claim. This was, by the way, before GPT. But there's still a catch. And the catch is not that knowledge management and AI tools don't work very well today. They do. But that the challenge of curating knowledge is still a bottleneck in most organizations. It's a very, very high return on investment for most organizations to invest in knowledge management and knowledge curation. However, the fact is that those people who are performing the task of curating knowledge, essentially taking a lot of the documented content that your business is constantly producing, which is not consumable but correct, turning that into consumable, correct content that can be tied to the relevant questions that your customers are asking. That is the process that knowledge managers go through, knowledge authors go through. That is still a manual process. Even though there are tools for workflow, for managing the feedback, for the questions that are coming in, the suggestions that are coming in, but it's a never-ending cycle. Right? And that is an opportunity that we think that can be addressed with the technologies of GPT. So let's think of how to apply it, how to apply that technology. Think of a new hire, a new assistant that you hire in your team, someone who joins your team. This is a person who's really quick, super quick. They can do any job that they are capable of doing very quickly. They can do that. They may not be 100% accurate. They'll get it 90% of the time. So you, as their supervisor or manager, should know how to fix what they have done. That fixing process should be relatively quick. Otherwise, the work they do is useless. So if you think of that kind of an assistant who's just joined your organization, think of what you could do with that person. As an agent, let's say if I put myself in an agent's shoes, I could use that assistant for different things. I could have them write a response and then just check the response if it's accurate or not, ship it off. I could classify cases which are coming in, decide what's the right categories and topics to put it under. I can take a quick look, seems right, add a few, ship it off. I can save time. But the real value is for authors, knowledge authors. Knowledge authors struggle with something that we all struggle with every day, and that's a blank sheet of paper, the writer's block. You're asked to write an article about some question that customers are asking. You're the knowledge author. Think about it. It takes a long time to get started. If someone could give you a decent draft, that's pretty valuable. You can edit it, you can fix it, off you go. Your productivity could be super high because of that assistant. If you wanted someone to translate your content, again, very, very routine, but very valuable. If you wanted someone to summarize your content, again, very routine, but very valuable. Takes a lot of time to do it well. And the thing is, as an expert author, you can quickly see the result coming from your assistant and decide whether it makes sense or not. So the incremental effort to review and confirm quality is not very high. So you see where I'm headed. The Knowledge Hub with GPT inside, we believe, is a great way to get transformational value out of GPT technologies in your area of the business. Now, the thing to keep in mind is some people would look at it and go, wait a minute, do I really need a knowledge hub? I can just use GPT standalone. I can apply it to some content sitting in my content management systems or in my SharePoint, wherever it is, right? On my website, and I can get answers. I'm done. Yes, you can, maybe 80% of the time. If you don't care about the quality of those responses, if you don't care about compliance, you don't care about controls, you don't care about the quality of those answers too much, and you don't care about the cost of that technology, then maybe it's a good answer. But for most people, the clients who we are working with, who are working with us nowadays, they are very mindful of the fact that good content with the right controls so that the technology has its guardrails around correctness, compliance, and a cost-effective solution is the way to apply this solution, this transformer technology in your business. So Knowledge Hub with GPT inside. Now, another thing that's really important in big organizations like yourselves is that it needs to have the ability to share on a platform where you can put in the best technology you think makes sense from a GPT standpoint. And a year from now, if you decide that specialized technologies and tools are coming up, that you could plug those into the right places in your flow of work for customer service. So maybe there is a specialized GPT variation that comes up around translation that's really cost effective. You want that to be applied to the translation part. There's another GPT variant because they will fragment. This technology is going to specialize, right? This ecosystem will create specialized GPT and transformer tools. You need to apply the right tools to the right place in your flow of work. So a platform which is composable, where you can plug and play with these AI services, is really important. Also important is the fact that you want something that does not require a lot of technology IT work to integrate these new GPT versions coming in. So it has to be a low-code or zero-code environment. And finally, you want an environment where all the work that you're doing to bring in transformer technologies to automate and improve productivity, that the work that you do is shared across your business. So for instance, prompts are a very good example. Prompts are going to turn into IP because the way you create these prompts determine the quality of responses you get from this technology. And while it starts very simple, I'm sure those of you who have GPT prompt it all the time and you get decent answers. But in a business where you have to make your prompts contextual, you have to make the prompt compliant, prompting becomes a science. It's still developing, but it's definitely becoming IP. You want an environment or a platform in which you are using GPT where your team, the organization, everyone is creating prompts. Some are doing it better than others. You should be able to share it. You should be able to confirm it, qualify it. That becomes part of your know-how. It's like programming. So a composable platform is really important. A standalone tool does not give you that advantage. So the idea of taking GPT, bringing it into a knowledge hub in a way that you can deliver the right content to the GPT tool, you can create the right controls around the GPT tool, and you can do it cost effectively, and do it all on a composable platform is what we are bringing today. And that is, we are announcing eGain Assist GPT. This is a solution that has a lot of use cases implemented in a way that makes your task easy, starting with the authors in your organization around knowledge, because we see that as the greatest point of leverage in quality and cost and speed of delivery for your business. Extending it out into the agent environment. So if you're using our agent desktop, the way agents can use the tool is again part of this Assist GPT solution. And finally, the analysts in your organization who are looking at measuring, managing, and optimizing your operation, and how can they take advantage with GPT interfaces. This is a solution that we started out, interestingly, building over a year ago, before GPT came in. We came up with a solution called Instant Answers, which had a generative component as well. And this is a dated claim, so we can verify this. But in October of last year, we announced instant answers in our US customer conference, where we talked about the ability to have generative solutions built inside a response. The reason I'm trying to bring this up is that we have been looking at this technology for a number of years, but of late, the utility and the ability to integrate has gone up because of the ecosystem explosion. Since ChatGPT came to the fore, the number of tools that have come up to make it easy to deploy and use these capabilities has gone up a lot. But they're all very technically oriented. And what we are doing here is bringing it into a business environment. So you can use it, your team members can use it, without necessarily being technical programmers, without knowing the details of machine learning and deep neural networks. This is a very exciting capability for us because as we have seen, and you can see the demonstrations in the lounge, for authors, this is going to be a godsend. For them to be able to take an assistant, the new hire, who can summarize content, who can create a new draft article based on suggestions and feedback, who can reorganize content to make it more consumable, who can create metadata out of content, all these things that knowledge authors do every day, but now they can do it 10 times faster because they get the drafts. This is leverage. And with the agent, of course, it's pretty obvious, right? Giving draft responses, classifying your content and cases, and then to the analyst to be able to ask questions in a plain language, right? Without having to program, without having to configure and customize. Ask questions like, well, what are the best performing prompts in the last week? Who are the best users of prompts in the author team? I can tell you. Who are the worst? Who are the laggards? So these are the ways you can make your customer service environment so much more agile and easy to work in. That's, to us, very exciting. Let me show you some examples of screens, just you can see it in action when you get downstairs. This is an example of an author's interface. Of course, I cannot give you all the richness in one screen, but the idea that you have, we've made this magic wand. We think it's sort of magical to some degree, where you can click on it and get a bunch of different use cases or ways to use generative AI, all the way from suggesting new content to summarizing it to creating a better version of a content. All of those options are available, and you can apply that to the task at hand. In addition to that, you also have AI insights which are being generated and being pushed to you, saying this particular article that you're on could potentially be rewritten to make it more easy to consume, to read. And if you click on that, it gives you a draft of what it thinks it could do better with your content. Just imagine how much time does that save a knowledge author. And it's not the time saved for the knowledge author that's important. What's important is the effort that the agents have to undergo because of, or your end customers have to undergo because of a poorly written article. Could be used 100 times in a week. That's the leverage you get when you apply generative AI upstream in the flow of work. Now, mind you, all this is critically important, that it has to go through the compliance, it has to be overseen and reviewed, it has to be analyzed, measured, and optimized. So all the controls need to still be in place, and I'll show you how we do that. The same applies to agents. So for an agent, for instance, they could summarize a particular chat and put that into the note section of the case. Now, if there is a mistake in the generative AI response, the agent has the ability to fix it. And you, as the owner of that platform, can decide which agent gets access to what. The same goes with classification. So there's a number of use cases that agents can use, but mind you, the authors have the most leverage. And then it kind of goes downstream from there. One thing to keep in mind is the management of all these prompts is something we have paid close attention to, because prompts can start to become really unwieldy. Right? You may have hundreds of different prompts in your organization for different use cases, different context, different tone. All of those need different prompts. So prompt engineering is really prompt management and prompt engineering. We're leaving the prompt engineering to the people who have to engineer, because we cannot be writing the prompts. Of course, we have a best practice library that we have put together for you. So you can get started. And then you can do your own if you want to from there. But we give you the ability to manage and make sure this prompt stuff is your IP. You own it. You make sure this is the best. And finally, the analytics. Without analysis, without the ability to see what is working and not working, in generative AI applications, you're flying blind. So it's great to say, oh, I can put a little button that will allow me to respond to a chat, but if I cannot tell as a business, how often does that generative response actually work? Does that close the case, or does it create a bigger stream of response from the customer again? So the effectiveness, the efficiency, all of that has to be measured and managed. And so we have integrated this generative AI capability into the hub so that you get those three things that I talked about. You get the right content, you get the right controls, and you get the right analytics. To us, this is a solution that you can use to improve that customer experience without taking a lot of risk, without letting people do whatever they want with generative AI, without going out of compliance, and without bankrupting your business. So we are so confident we have, in fact, added this capability to our innovation in 30 days. This is an offer that we do for all our other solutions. This is an offer that we make where we'll take one of your use cases, we will configure it, and you can use it in production. All of that happens in 30 days for no charge and no other commitment. We know that this is something that will help you understand how to bring in generative AI into your customer service organizations. So I'll end all this by saying, to us, GPT in and of itself is extremely powerful, but it's something that needs to be used in concert with a knowledge hub in an organization that is servicing customers. Start with looking at your content. How do you make your authors more efficient? How do you make your agents more efficient? And then how do you make your analysts more efficient? And that's the transformation journey that we think we can help you with. So we are super excited about this. Love you to engage with us. Tell us what you would like to see, what you find would be helpful for your organizations. And of course, tell us what we could do better. We look forward to the day. Thank you.